Hi everyone, my name is Jessie Han, and I want all of you to close your eyes. Really, close your eyes. I see you back there. I know you're not closing your eyes, okay? Everyone, close your eyes and just think what comes to mind when I say the word leadership. Maybe it's a world leader leading their country. Maybe it's a teacher teaching their class. Okay, now think of someone that comes to mind when I say that they're a good leader. Maybe a friend, a teacher, a mentor. Okay, last but not least, a little harder, think of someone that you would say is a bad leader. Maybe it's that one person in your English class that does all the work, or that one person in that group project that just leads even though they don't even know what they're talking about. Okay, now open your eyes and look around. And just think, maybe someone in this room was thinking about you. I'm just kidding, please. But you know what? There's no shame in that because I'll be the first to say that I have been and still am a terrible leader. But first, thank you. But first, the basics, the term leadership. It is a term so used so often that it's such a powerful buzzword that has been changing through everyone's perception. Some people see it as a visionary leading a crowd, while other people see it as a supportive team member. This is the question I held on to. What is leadership? And what does it entail? What does it mean to be a good or bad leader? Every time I lead a group project, talk in a discussion, be in a Socratic seminar, I'd ask myself, am I being a good leader? And I didn't know it at the time, but as time passed on, I took on more leadership roles and positions and understood the clear answer. I was a terrible leader. You don't understand. A lot of the meetings I led were chaotic, loud, disruptive. A lot of the events I planned didn't go as planned, and some of the instructions I asked other people to do didn't go through because they didn't just understand. I was frustrated and really confused. Why was I being placed in these positions when I wasn't even a good leader? The answer was a lack of education. I never learned what it meant to be a good leader. So I was determined. I was going to learn, I was going to educate myself, and I did that by watching a lot of YouTube videos, reading a lot of books, joining leadership classes, joining a leadership academy, and putting myself in more leadership positions to practice my leadership. And through this, I learned 3 things about myself. 3 lessons of why I was a bad leader, and 3 lessons in what a bad leader is. So number 1, being the loudest. I was always the loudest in the group. But you can imagine this as a teacher. Imagine you're in class. Imagine you're in class, and your teacher is standing there with their hip to the side, waiting for the class to quiet down. You've seen this multiple times, and they really have 2 options. 1, to make sure you're quiet, make sure the class is quiet until they start talking, or 2, be the loudest person. And usually the teachers resolve to that. They make sure everyone is quiet until they start talking. But to me, I did the latter. I would yell and say, hey guys, come on, pay attention, let's get this started. Or when I had a good idea, I'd raise my hand obnoxiously and say, oh my goodness, I have the best idea, everyone, you have to listen up. Leading a crowd that's not listening to you is beyond leading. It's just adding to the noise, being part of the distraction. Number 2, complaining a lot. Now before I explain this one, there's something you should know about me. I love event planning. You don't understand. For the past 4 years, I've been planning so many events, from bondings to fundraisers, not only because I see the good and the impact it has, but because I am obsessed. I love planning events, I love brainstorming, I love working together, and because of that, I went through a lot of experiences. And through those experiences, I learned a lot of lessons. First of which is the dangers of complaining and going through that rabbit hole. My favorite example of this was an event that we planned called Palapalooza. Maybe you guys have heard of it. But I specifically remember going into that thinking, wow, this is going to be a great day, a great event, until it became really cold. There were many booth setups, and because it was cold, people started to leave. And as people started to leave, the people managing these booths also started to leave. And when those people started to leave, people going and the participants saw that the booths were empty, and then they started to leave. I was managing my own tie-dye booth, and I was so frustrated, looking at people leaving, and I didn't understand. Why were they leaving? Why? Because this was an event that our team planned so hard in. Okay, well, I was trying to keep that positive mindset. I told myself, okay, this is great. It's fine. Things can't get any worse. Until I look down and I see tie-dye all over the ground that I spilled on the concrete floor. Oh my goodness, I have to clean this up too. I grabbed a bunch of supplies. I was wiping the ground only to realize that tie-dye wasn't coming off. It was forever cemented in the cement. Okay, it's okay. It couldn't get better. The day can't get any worse. And then I realized there was no music because our performers weren't there. Oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? There's no people, there's no music, but you know what? It's fine, things will be okay. And then the last straw. A gust of wind blew all the popcorn onto the ground, leaving no more for everyone else. That is crazy. That was when I finally realized I was in the pit of complaining. Number 3, pleasing everyone. You might be wondering, isn't this a great skill to have as a leader? And you might be true, but let me tell you a story. A long time ago, there was a king named King Herod Antipas. Let's say it all together. Ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. King Herod Antipas. He ruled over Galilee and Perea, and he was known as a weak and morally corrupt leader. Why? Because there was a guy named John, and John was going around sharing these philosophies and ideas, and the king was super interested, but yet was scared. He was scared of what it meant to be interested in these philosophies, and he was scared of the judgment others people had on him. I mean, he was the king, and he was scared of the judgment others had on him. What made it worse was his wife hated John and wanted his head on a silver platter. The king didn't even know how to say no, and so he let that happen. He knew it was unjust, but he still let this morally corrupt thing happen. So I'm not saying a good leader does not please everyone, and I'm not saying that everyone around a good leader is unhappy. But what I am saying is a bad leader puts the priority onto others' thoughts, ideas, over their own. So what? The obvious answer, I identified these 3 things and wanted to change. If these 3 things were making me into a terrible leader, I'll just do the opposite, and that would make me into a great leader. So that's what I did. And for the next 7 months, I wanted to see how things would change, but then nothing did. Actually, it became a lot worse. A lot of our meetings were more chaotic, everything went downhill, problems were being unsolved, and these 3 opposite things were just creating a bigger mess. Even worse, one of the people I was working with in this organization came up to me and said, "Jessie, you're really nice and all, but maybe you should read a book about leadership." Oh, hello? I've been working every day to try to change my behavior, change my attitude, change how I was leading to become a better leader, but still I was a bad leader. This moment forced me to ask the bigger question. What if these traits that I viewed as weaknesses weren't meant to be eliminated, weren't meant to be changed all the time, but were meant to be understood, redirected, and become sources of my strength? I took this mindset back to my 3 points. Being the loudest. At first, I thought this was a trait that all bad leaders had, and I had to let it go. But the opposite, being quiet all the time, wasn't the way either. So what was? I wasn't wrong with wanting to share my opinions and my ideas and wanting to be the loudest, but I realized I needed to take a step back. Taking a step back and strategizing when I used my voice. Using it correctly inspired and motivated people through the strong communication that I had. Being loud wasn't inherently bad, but only it was bad when it was used all the time. The trick was to know when to talk and when to be quiet. Like the teacher, when they have the face wanting to make the class be quiet, they start by waiting first. Not because they want to be loud and they don't want to be loud, but they're waiting for the right opportunity, the right moment to speak. It's all about the strong communication and knowing when to speak and when to listen. Number 2, complaining a lot. And like I said, this was really hard to accept because I love complaining. I mean, don't we all? It was a good way to release some of my stress and my rants, but there was nothing really to it. On the flip side, not complaining and pretending that everything was fine wasn't helping anyone either. So what's the solution? Being proactive. So there's very active, but being proactive meant that in my complaining, I was actively searching for solutions. During Palapalooza, all I could do was complain and complain and complain because I didn't know what else to do. But when I realized that there's more, and when I reflected on the event, I realized I could have done more. Instead of being frustrated at people leaving, I should have stepped in and said, hey, come on, can we please stick together? And instead of waiting for performers, I could have reached out to them and called them and saw that the performances and schedule went smoothly. And when I saw the popcorn blowing through the air, I could have picked it all up and popped some new corn. Being proactive in these problems and trying to actively solve these problems and find solutions was the key of being a better leader. Number 3, pleasing everyone. As a bad leader, I put other people's thoughts and ideas over mine. But on the other hand, not putting theirs first and putting my intuition and my gut was wrong too. I was often leading people in the wrong direction, both ways. The only way to solve this problem was to find the root of it, which was being empathetic. On one hand, being too empathetic meant that I was getting pushed over and not knowing what to do. But on the other hand, not being empathetic at all meant that I didn't know how to help other people. The answer is to find that balance. To find the balance is a challenge of its own, something I'm currently working on to every day. But you know what? King Herod had its trouble, and even he couldn't find that balance. So it's hard. It's hard, but it's an important key to becoming a better leader, something I realized over these couple of years. But at the end of the day, what does this mean? At the end of the day, these are my lessons in leadership. These are 3 things that I've learned, and all of you guys are different. We're made in different ways. We have different qualities, strengths, and weaknesses, and the point is that it's a good thing to find out you're a bad leader. Knowing that you're a bad leader allows you to find qualities that you can change and improve. You might find that your bad leadership qualities aren't bad at all, not worth eliminating, but working with and on those entirely. But let's be real. These leadership qualities, even if you recognize and know them, are so hard. They're so hard to implement because we're human. But good thing, as the quote says, leadership is a journey. We have so many opportunities to try, and try again. Now, for the last time, I want everyone to close your eyes, okay? And think of that person you're thinking of who is a bad leader. Think about what made them a bad leader and how their qualities can be turned into becoming a better leader. Last but not least, think about yourself. Think about the projects that you've been in and the group work that you've all done. How have you been a bad leader? And how can these traits be turned into being a better leader? Thank you.